right. I'm gonna try to do this all in one go. Uh, if you're receiving this, um, it's because I love you deeply, and for what I'm going to get into, uh, that you will continue to love me, um, in spite of whatever happens or how you feel. Um, you may be wondering why I'm deciding to do a video, and that's because what I do have to say is something I am terrified to say in person. And I don't know if call it cowardly, call it whatever. It feels safer to do a video. And I can speak clearly and get my thoughts out uh, without being afraid. Um, know that when I talk about this, for anybody dismissing what I'm going to say as being cocky or out of a sense of pride or from a rebellion or a seeking after pleasure, know this, that I did not come to this decision lightly at all. And I hope, if you please listen to the whole video, please, that you'll see that it is not a decision I came to lightly. And just to be clear, what I am about to talk about, I know some of you have been made or were made aware of my doubts about Christianity. As much as I know it's going to hurt to hear, but again, from hearing this video, I hope that you understand how I came to this decision. For all intents and purposes, I am no longer a Christian, and I don't believe in the supernatural at all. So if you're worried that college has made me believe in the light in me or this shared spirituality, which is very common here, I'm very against it. So in that sense, I'm not diving in with whatever beliefs are around here. So I would not like that accusation either. But then you may be wondering, okay, why at this time? Why tell us in the middle of your semester right now? Or why not earlier? Well, because of the membership class, really is what it came to, is because push came to shove, really. I heard a week in advance that we were going to be doing the membership class and that there was going to be testimonies, and I didn't know what to do. And it didn't happen this Sunday, but it's coming next Sunday. And I can't, in my own integrity and in good faith, give a testimony because I no longer believe in that testimony or in the faith that I held so dearly. And if any of you are questioning how deeply I believed the Christian faith. Ask my peers. Ask yourselves when I talked about it. Behind closed doors, in the talks where I could have been very candid, and if I wasn't much of a believer, I could have been very open about it. I spoke very highly of my deep felt relationship, my connection to God, and how there was something to fight for through God and to increase my faith, that being the fight, and to tell others about it. Again, please, I deeply believed it, and I know this is probably going to shock a lot of people, knowing that I've changed in this way. Maybe not most of you, because of the talks I had in the past couple months ago. So to start the story as to how this happened, I'll get into it. So you could say that the doubts of it started a while back. However, I don't think that would be true, because those doubts drove me deeper into my faith. And what I mean by that is, when I would go to strengthen my faith when I was younger, we're going back to, I don't know, my mid-teen years, let's say 16, and I would look into any arguments against Christianity. I would be very terrified of them, because they made sense to me. And I didn't know how to take that, because I didn't know how to withstand something that was against it. Yet, in spite of that, I decided that I wasn't going to let myself be afraid of these responses to Christianity, and I was going to find good answers against these claims against Christianity. The claims being on all a scientific, a philosophical level, in both areas, and I'll get into what those areas are, like what the contents of those areas were and are. So I suck out my answers to these questions that these people had raised. So I found, I don't know, most of you might be familiar with Drew Santa, who I had done Bible studies with, who really, really at the time made me very understanding of my faith and the Christian faith, and also Urban Impact, especially with Nathan Glover and his Bible study. I think that was the first time I heard about the intelligent design argument, otherwise known as the teleological argument for Christianity, which I loved. In its essence, it is that the world is too beautiful and too specifically made and well designed in a way where it could be by chance. Hence a creator. Another was the moral argument, which C.S. Lewis was a very big advocate of, and many others. One being Peter Hitchens, who is ironically Christopher Hitchens' brother, which I'll get into later. But yeah, these arguments were very satisfactory to me, to the point where, yeah, I did dive further into my faith because of them. So much to the point that when moral concerns were raised about the things being taught in Christian circles, especially at Urban Impact, and to acknowledge this, that I am not dismissing just one kind of Christianity. I am, this is in Christianity in its essence, because I believe that I was in a circle of people, this includes you, and Urban Impact, of people who really tried to follow the Bible as best as they could. And for that very reason, it's seeing people that so strongly follow the Bible that turned me away from it, because that was it lived out. I always dismissed any objections or the exceptions to the moral rules that were in or taught in the Bible and taught at Urban Impact, and I thought my faith was stronger. The faith that I had shared with everybody else was stronger than anything the world had to throw. So much to the point where for my college and heading into college, the alternative was to go to Urban Impact and work there. That was the alternative. And if you don't believe me, ask Eric. That was what we talked about. And when I was there, I realized I was not on a Christian campus, and I was warned about that, right? I was warned that I would try to be indoctrinated and that I would be told my faith is ridiculous. And when I got to Point Park, I was not met with such adversity. I mean, in a social context, there were people that did not live as to what I thought Christianity was. But in terms of classes, I have no classes that touch on religion. I still don't. I did not. We're talking about back in winter and the fall. I did not have teachers openly objecting to the Bible or anything it had to say. And there are still people in my class who will not do certain monologues and are very respected for it because of deeply held Christian beliefs. So in that sense, I was hardly, and I mean hardly as in not, oppressed for my faith here. I felt comfortable enough to go to the library and get a book on how I could express prayer and how prayer works better to people. And I devoted my time to reading that book. And not only that book, but also anything that was sent to me by any of you or suggested to me. I watched a lot of Mike Winger, and alongside him, William Lang Craig, which is a name that'll come up a lot later. He is a renowned, highly respected in Christian circles philosopher and theologian. And he's not progressive. And also I would like to acknowledge that, and again, that is, as you'll see by the end of this, I'm not sparing progressive Christians from this either in terms of thinking that they're all right. I think why call yourself a Christian at all and try to compromise with a book that is obviously so against what you believe? It just seems like there's a lot of cognitive dissonance going on there. But again, all this to say, this is how I got to where I was at. This is not trying to project thinking that there is or this is the way you're thinking. This is how I got to where I was at, and I'm trying to be very candid about it. So you can see I'm not doing this on a whim, or I did not do this on a whim. So, yeah, I was satisfied in my faith until I started looking again into these arguments against God. And they had hit harder than ever before. However, I wasn't in a place, though, where I would need to feel like I had to hide from them, or not even that, but where after hearing them, I wasn't devastated. And that's not because I didn't believe my faith. It's because I didn't let my emotions be crushed by hearing something that made sense and then also conflicted with what I already believed. I was willing to engage in that from a Christian perspective without being hurt. However, these arguments more than ever started to make a lot more sense than what I had been taught, the intelligent design argument and the moral argument. Those being that for against creationism, that how in the face of scientific advancement and any studying we've done for the past couple hundred years, do we keep believing that the world is 6,000 to 10,000 years old when all the evidence points to it not being 6,000 to 10,000 years old and being much, much, much older? And this is where I know we're going to have a divide, is because I have stopped holding the Bible on a higher level than everything else. I don't hold it to that same level anymore. I don't hold it over science. So that is going to be where we're going to conflict on this. I mean, as we are many, many other spots of this. But yeah, to have then a religion, Christianity, that was then made, give or take, 4,000 years ago, to explain a species, us, that has been here hundreds of thousands of years, and in the sense we know more now, thousands, tens of thousands of years, in a world that is far older than the book claims, in a universe that is far older than the book claims. But then we leave it up into interpretation to make the two make sense together, to make evolution also make sense with that, which also it's important to acknowledge evolution is a separate study from what physicists are doing in terms of trying to examine how the universe works. Biologists, evolution, physicists, the, I guess, larger scale things you could say. So to put two and two together is making your own connection to them that is making them one and the same when they're two different fields of study. So, yeah, that didn't make sense in light of the Bible. It's like, okay, why can't you believe evolution and the Bible are together? Why can't a lot of people accept both together? Well, for me, that seemed like cognitive dissonance to try to say that the Bible was still true in spite of overwhelming evidence that the story there is not in line with scientific study. So I brought these questions then to Nathan Glover, who had originally heard my favorite teleological argument from. And if you think I'm just one person enjoying or finds this argument profound, or I did find the argument profound, look into these theologians that I did when trying to, and philosophers, and mathematicians, John Lennox, when trying to figure this out. I am not alone in this. Christians will say that it takes certain kinds of evidence to convince people. What convinces somebody else of the faith, or what leads them to someone, and Nate was saying this, may not lead someone else. And I think they're right. Sometimes someone can be emotionally convinced to be a Christian, or they're not interested in these other fields. But that wasn't lining up. And part of my thought was, well, no, this is the world. This is what I was always told about, that the world is against Scripture, and Satan rules this world, and there's so much deception in it. And I did not excuse science from that. But I was still curious. And I brought it to Nate. And I asked him, how can we, when science is increasingly making the Bible make less and less sense in light of it, how do we come to terms with that? And actually, Paulo was with me when I was asking this. I don't know if he would remember. Nathan went on to say that there is if you will, a science of the gaps, and that science doesn't know everything, and it is always changing. And I thought that was a good answer to my question. And this is what I'm heading back to right now, the God of the Gaps argument, which is that science is making the Bible make less and less sense. But I was satisfied with that answer for a little bit. Then I realized how little sense it made, because the difference is this science the gaps idea is actually filling these gaps. And before any of you've already probably been saying, because I've made this video far too long, that science has always been used as a tool to disprove God. There was actually a time where science was had a lot of stigma in some areas, because it didn't make sense what people had believed with at the time that were religious. And at that time, the studies that they were finding wouldn't have even really been against some of what they believed, but it has moved into that. And it's also important to acknowledge that we accept, and I mean there are many Christians who accept so much of science, but when it starts to conflict with the Bible, then they split off. Then it's wrong. Despite the well proven other sides of it that they're willing to accept, when the other sides that are against maybe something they believe start to become well accepted and are well proven, there's an issue. And this is also another very important thing to acknowledge. I am not saying that I know for sure that there is not a God. However, I don't think there is good evidence that there is a God. And I know that's harsh for many of you to hear me say, but I don't think there is. And providing me the science of the gaps argument was not sufficient. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm looking at science. This is not just the one category of things. There's also philosophy, and Christianity reigns very strongly on a philosophical level. And one way being, an argument that even in my deepest, when I started to really doubt, that really kept me in Christianity was the moral argument, which I mentioned earlier. And the name Peter Hitchens, I remember watching him. He's a Christian. He has been for quite some time now, saying that these atheists and anybody who wasn't a Christian or religious didn't want to take moral responsibility. Accountability and repercussions for actions does not go away. And that's not because it's connected to a God. It is because that's not inherent to him. And we're right now in the timeline, we are in October 2021 when I'm talking about. I officially acknowledged my deconversion and that I wasn't a Christian at the start of November. So yes, I have not been a Christian for 4 months. And in that time, I have found no less needing to be accountable for my actions. And I think claiming that is a lousy route out. And this gets to some of my dread that I had to come to terms with, and very much have come to terms with, of that I may not have before I get into that, I thought I wasn't believing enough. And I remember talking to Eric and Eric when we were meeting for Bible studies during this time, and I still considered myself a Christian mid-October, saying that I need to believe Jesus in the sense that this is just an analogy, if he were to push somebody off a building, I would not ask him, why did he do that? I would ask him what that person did, because whatever Jesus did, I would know was the correct way and that he had good reason behind it. It's kind of ironic that it was barely even, or not even a month after that I had renounced it privately. Because I don't think I should trust anything like that, where it's beyond question, where it's beyond being able to change. And that's why I think it's a very important thing about science and it being able to change, is that there is room to improve. When it's been wrong, we've learned from it and we've grown from it. So, yeah, that's the difference to science and the advancement of man that I see in God is God in the supernatural shrinks in light of that. Hence, the God of the gaps argument still stands. And the science of the gaps argument is running out the clock as the gaps in knowledge we have, the ignorance, is filled. But again, this moral argument seemed to make sense to me. Because we have objective moral values. Unless you take God out of the question, and even if we do have God, there's if you just taking the idea of God, there's some holes in that. But taking God out of that equation, then we don't have objective moral values. And it's not like these people I was looking into, especially William Lane Craig, and I looked into a lot of different theologians heard out what they had to say as a Christian, and both after I deconverted, that if there was a God, there would be no objective moral values. But they paint this as a picture of complete dread and despair, in that we know that there are objective values, so hence a God exists. It's the scariest. There are two notions that worry me the most, and it's one that the response to this video is going to be so negative that I am cut off from you guys, and I don't want that at all. That's why I'm doing this. I love you, and I want that connection with you, and I don't want to lose that to this disagreement. And the other scary thing being is just how ignorant I am. Ignorant to believe under this, or was to believe that we are under this objective moral system, when really, and I know this is going to get a lot of hate, is we're not. It is subjective, but we are in consensus so much on it that we objectively judge it. And that doesn't mean those morals mean nothing, and don't take subjectiveness as that. We made them, and to me that adds so much more meaning to them. And I've come to terms with that I don't need an objective moral lawgiver. And that in order for things to be the way they are, we don't need that. A big philosopher that helped me come to terms with exactly how do I go forward where there is a universe where there isn't objective moral values, which is a very scary thing to hear at first, was a very controversial writer who I don't agree with all of his points on. However, the ones I will say I agree with on profoundly. But again, like I'm saying, and I'm trying to step away from as much as I can, are not above question. They are not above being able to be corrected and made better. Friedrich Nietzsche. He, unlike most people think, was not a nihilist in the way they think he was. He did not promote the nihilism that they think he did. Friedrich Nietzsche in his opposition to Christianity and in his famous "God is dead" quote, talks about shortly after that about it being a crime that we have killed him. Because, in truth, Christianity has provided most, granted a very flawed, but a moral basis for people. When that is taken into question with scientific advancement and starting to be pushed away, or what he was seeing at his time, he saw and was very worried about in the future that people would become nihilists and would think that nothing matters, so why try at anything, and would become careless, only pursuing pleasure and to be safe. He called this the passive nihilist, the mediocre man. That's what he wanted to avoid. And we see people like that today. And those people are greatly ridiculed, and I don't agree with them either. And unlike those people, I don't want to be condescending towards these beliefs I have drawn away from. However, I want all of you to understand why I don't hold them anymore. The other, and the solution he had, what he thought was the much better route, what he promoted, was the active nihilist. The active nihilist, in spite of a universe that does not have objective moral values, takes their time and learns through pain and hardship and fighting through their own ignorance to make their own values. We would refer to this as the Übermensch. And yes, granted, very misinterpreted readings of his were used by the Nazis. Very misinterpreted, because again, he is talking about something that is really hard to come to terms with. And so, again, it was subject to misinterpretation. So instead of, in like Christianity, in religions, is there an ultimate purpose to pursue because of objective values? But the purpose is to try to pursue and find purpose itself. The pursuit is in the pursuit of values themselves. And to me, that is a much more honest, for myself, sincere